On the last day of the August 2006 transfer window, West Ham United signed two of the best players in the world. Both players had just lit up a World Cup. Every major club in Europe wanted them. Somehow, they ended up in East London playing for a side that had finished ninth the season before. Nobody could quite explain how, which, as it turns out, was rather the point. Behind the deal was a web of offshore companies, concealed contracts and arrangements that broke Premier League rules outright. West Ham knew, they signed anyway, and then they told nobody. Now, when this came out, the Premier League investigated, found them guilty, issued a record fine. It was the biggest in the league's history at that point, but somehow still cleared the player to keep playing. 2 weeks later, that player scored the goal that kept West Ham in the Premier League. Someone else paid the price, and they're still paying it now. Now, the two players were Carlos Tevez and Javier Mascherano. Both Argentine, both 22, both had just starred for Argentina at the World Cup in Germany. Tevez in particular was being tracked by half of Europe. Before arriving in England, Tevez had already won the Copa Libertadores with Boca Juniors and the Brazilian League title with Corinthians, where he was named the best player in the entire country. He was the first non-Brazilian to win that award in nearly 30 years. Chelsea, Inter Milan and Real Madrid all wanted to sign him and would have paid millions. But it was West Ham who got him, and they got him for free. Now, the reason nobody could quite explain the deal was because the deal was not really West Ham's to make. An investment company, operating through a series of offshore arrangements, owned the economic rights to both players. Not West Ham, it was them. Premier League rules explicitly banned that kind of arrangement. Third parties could not hold influence over a player's future transfers. It undermined the whole system. West Ham knew this. They signed the players anyway and structured the contracts to conceal the private agreements from the Premier League entirely. Years later, West Ham's own legal director admitted what the motivation actually was. The private agreements, he said, were purely there to protect the investment company's position if things went sideways. Javier Mascherano made 5 league appearances for West Ham United. The reason he couldn't get more was Alan Pardew consistently preferred Hayden Mullins in midfield. Mascherano subsequently went to Liverpool, then Barcelona, where he won the Champions League twice. Hayden Mullins went to Portsmouth. And initially, Tevez wasn't much better. 4 months at the club, not a single goal, struggling with the language, being played out of position by a manager who didn't seem entirely sure what to do with him. Then in November, West Ham beat Sheffield United 1-0 at home. Tevez was substituted. He did not take it well. He left the stadium before the final whistle and didn't come back. More on Sheffield United later. His teammates decided on the punishment. Donate part of his wages to Great Ormond Street Hospital and train in a Brazil shirt for 2 weeks. He paid the charity without argument. The Brazil shirt he would not touch. Said he was Argentine and that was final. That December, Alan Pardew was sacked. Alan Kirbishley came in. Kirbishley sat Tevez down with an interpreter, drew the pitch out, divided it into thirds and told him he was giving him marks out of 10 for where he was spending his time. Then he asked him one question. How are you going to score goals if you never go in the attacking third? He paired him with Bobby Zamora and Tevez started scoring. We get to March 4th, 2007. West Ham at home to Tottenham. Tevez picks up the ball 30 yards out, bends a free kick off the underside of the bar and into the net. His first goal in English football, after 16 games and over 1,000 minutes of nothing. West Ham lost that game 4-3. They were 10 points from safety with 9 games left. He then scored 7 goals in West Ham's final 10 league games. Now, while all of this was happening on the pitch, the Premier League had been quietly investigating since January. In March 2007, they formally charged West Ham with breaching 2 rules. Rule B13, act in good faith toward other clubs. Rule U18, no third party can hold influence over a player's transfers. West Ham had broken both, deliberately and concealed it. On April 27, 2007, West Ham were found guilty on both counts. The fine was £5.5 million, no points deduction, and Tevez was cleared to keep playing. Now, £5.5 million sounds significant, and at the time for a football fine, it was a record, the largest the Premier League had ever handed out. But does that mean it's enough? I mean, Premier League television money was worth roughly 30 million a season to each club. West Ham had broken the rules, been found guilty, and were charged less than 2 months of television revenue to stay in a division worth 30 million a year. That's not a punishment, that's an invoice in my opinion. Now, had they got a points deduction, West Ham go down. Sheffield United stay up, the story ends here. The verdict landed with 3 games remaining. Tevez plays all 3. West Ham win all 3. He scores twice in a 3-1 win over Bolton. Then he scores the only goal at Old Trafford against the champions on the final day of the season. May 13th, 2007. It's the last day. 2 matches at the same time that both matter. West Ham are at Old Trafford against the champions. Sheffield United are at Bramall Lane against Wigan. West Ham need a win. Sheffield United need a draw. 1 point is enough to keep them up. Now, Manchester United have already won the league, nothing riding on this for them. Warnock later said Ferguson told him in the week he would field a strong team. Ryan Giggs, Paul Scholes and Cristiano Ronaldo all start on the bench. Warnock's word for how he felt when he found out? Numb. Over at Bramall Lane, Sheffield United are holding. Wigan take the early lead through Paul Scharner. Sheffield United equalised through John Steed. A draw is still enough, still alive. At Old Trafford, first half stoppage time. Goalkeeper Robert Green launches it long. Bobby Zamora flicks it on. Tevez, the player who by rights should not be on this pitch, goes between 2 defenders and slots it in. West Ham lead 1-0. At almost exactly the same moment at Bramall Lane, Wigan win a free kick. It comes into the area. Phil Jagielka handles it. Penalty. 3 minutes earlier, Wigan had made a substitution and brought on David Unsworth. It is him who steps up to take the kick. Now, the thing is, he started this very season at Sheffield United, wore their shirt, knew these fans. The club released him for nothing in January, and now here he was, standing 12 yards out, wearing someone else's shirt in front of 32,000 Sheffield United supporters. If he scores, he knows it almost certainly sends them down. He steps up to the spot. He scores. 2-1 Wigan. Unless results changed, Unsworth has just saved his current club from relegation at the expense of his former club. A bittersweet moment. He said later he was devastated for the Sheffield United fans. Meanwhile, back at Old Trafford, West Ham are holding on. Ferguson sends on Giggs, Scholes and Ronaldo. West Ham's goalkeeper Robert Green makes save after save to preserve their 1-goal lead. Over at Bramall Lane, Sheffield United have thrown everything at Wigan. Wigan go down to 10 men, but it makes no difference. The Blades cannot score. The final whistle blows at both grounds. West Ham survive. Sheffield United are relegated on goal difference. The difference between staying up and going down, 1 goal. Ferguson was asked about this afterwards. He said, "Whether West Ham should be in the league is not for me to say." Sheffield United had some thoughts on that. They immediately launched legal proceedings. They wanted their Premier League place back. That failed. So they went after compensation instead. 2 years of arbitration. In September 2008, the independent tribunal ruled in their favour. The finding was unambiguous. Tevez was worth at least 3 points to West Ham over the course of that season. 3 points was exactly the margin between survival and relegation. West Ham were liable. In March 2009, both clubs settled out of court. West Ham pays Sheffield United 20 million, 4 million a year over 5 years. Tevez by this point had already won the Premier League and Champions League with Manchester United. Sheffield United took the money. It did not help. By 2011, they were in League One. It took them 12 years to get back to the Premier League. West Ham stayed up, kept spending, won the Europa Conference League in 2023, finished their 14-year stay in the top flight by getting relegated on the final day of the 25-26 season. Neil Warnocks had been asked about West Ham's relegation battle earlier that same season. He said, "It wouldn't bother me to see West Ham go down. It's a bit of a long overdue payback, I think." He got what he wanted 19 years later on the final day, same as 2007. Now, you might be wondering why I called this video "The Time a Murderer on Bail Sunk a Premier League Club." Now, that's not me calling Carlos Tevez a murderer out on bail. It actually comes from a famous quote from Neil Warnocks. He said, "Sir Alex Ferguson, a man I had always looked up to, had put out a weakened team against West Ham. I was numb about that. And then Carlos Tevez, football's equivalent of a murderer out on bail, had scored the goal that kept West Ham up and put us down. So much for integrity of the Premier League. So much for fairness and justice in English football.